and when he passed away, he left his cameras to my family, and I kind of just picked them up and played with them a little bit, and thought it was very interesting. I actually just read through, like when I was a senior in high school, I read through a Kodak book, like that just described shutter speed, and I was just enamored with how you could freeze water droplets, which is like the simplest thing ever. But it obviously it helped out a lot because I started taking pictures for. I was on the yearbook staff, and I started taking pictures for the yearbook. Even though I was an editor, we didn't have our pictures in time, so I went out and started doing sports, and they looked pretty good. But it was just a hobby. I went to college, and I was going to be an actor actually. I had a theater scholarship, and then I was like, oh man, I'm never going to make money doing theater. I should probably try something else like photography. So I switched over to that because actually it wasn't even until after like two years working on the staff at the college newspaper that I was like, maybe I should actually just do this. And right after that, I sort of hit the rev or hit the gas or accelerator and decided to start doing internships. And I started my first internship on a minor league baseball team at a local 1A team, like just a single A minor league team in Spokane, Washington. And I did that all summer. And then when I came back, I got an internship with a daily newspaper in Montana, which was like about 30,000 circulation. And then I got, right after that, I did the Seattle Times, which was a much bigger metropolitan newspaper. And I realized every time I was getting into these different newspapers, I would end up doing a lot of sports. They would end up, my mentors would always be the sports photographers. Seattle, I don't know if you guys know who Rod Marr is. He's a legendary sports photographer in Seattle. And I did 5 newspaper internships at daily newspapers altogether. And after that, I was looking for a job in newspapers, but saw the writing on the wall at the same time that newspapers weren't really doing so well. And I was really hoping to emulate one of my favorite photographers, Donald Morale, at the time, who I looked up to a lot when I was in college. He's a Getty, he was a Getty photographer. Now he's a freelance photographer in San Diego. But he worked for a small wire agency for sports images. And so I had an opportunity to apply at Icon Sports Media, which is well, I don't know what it's called now, but it was a wire agency. And I ended up shooting, I got hired there as a staff photographer and an editor. So I would do part-time editing other people's incoming images. And then I would go out and shoot for them as well. And they had 2 staff photographers. I was very fortunate enough to get on that. And while I did that, I sort of ramped up my portraiture. I always did lighting. I always liked lighting. I did lighting when I was in theater. I learned a lot of like the aspects of lighting from theatrical lighting. Again, I was my major was theater, so a lot of technical design, and I look at a lot of my shoots from that aspect, and I use a lot of my stuff I learned back then in college, which I thought was useless until I had this sort of epiphany that all these things helped everything I was doing. I took directing classes. Even just getting people like to kind of like listen to you and sort of communicate to you. Like those skills were all developed while I was learning from my theater degree. But definitely the most important things were designing sets. I learned to design sets, costumes. I did special effects things in theater. So again, so much of this stuff just sort of dabbled into my work and all created the lump sum of what it is now. And then after that, I needed to go full time, freelance, because I was getting more work, but not enough to sort of support myself. I was too scared. It's sort of a leap. I'm sure some of you have that sort of similar mentality or are in that similar situation where you have a job or you have another job and you want to make photography your job full time, and it's hard to make that first step. And I had a lot of friends be like, you'll be fine, you'll make money, but really they don't know, because you gotta develop your client base, and you gotta develop a consistency, and you gotta develop your style as well, and make sure that your images are yours, because when people are looking for a certain type of picture, you know, they'll especially art buyers, they'll literally like present me with the exact same picture I've already taken and be like, I need you to take this exact same thing. Because a lot of people in that sort of industry don't really, I don't know, they don't have a bigger vision sometimes. It's weird, even though they are art directors or creative directors. And sometimes they're not, they're just communications people with athletes. So luckily, I took a step where I worked part-time at Fox Sports. I was editing part-time, and while I was doing that, I started getting bigger jobs. I got my first job for Coca-Cola in China with that. And then after 6 months, I decided that I was going to just go full-time and try to do this on my own. And I haven't looked back since, but you know, who knows? We're living in different times now. But luckily, my jobs now are bigger. Usually, they're harder. Definitely, sometimes they take months to plan. Sometimes they take multiple weeks of my time just putting together pitch decks, putting together lighting diagrams. Everything has to be really dialed in on these shoots because sometimes you're working with, say, for instance, I work with Red Bull a lot. For instance, that picture right there. But like a lot of times we'll end up doing campaigns where they have other sponsors helping out. Like I do Formula One racing for Red Bull, and they have Tag Heuer and a sunglass company and other things. So not only am I taking pictures for Red Bull's brand, I'm also taking pictures for some other people's brands as well in there at the same time. So it's a lot of planning, a lot of different setups going on, and I've sort of gained a reputation of being able to get a lot of different looks in a very short amount of time. And I think that's just practice and years of doing a lot of this stuff. And basically that's where I'm at right now.
That's awesome.
So yeah, like looking through these images, I haven't updated this in, I will say, about a year or two. But yeah, I do a lot of obviously athletes. I sort of categorize things differently in here, as the first ones you were looking at were action sort of portraits and athlete portraits, and then this goes to more of a, you know, the actors and normal people sort of looks, and not as I mean, she's an athlete, but it kind of goes to a normal sort of look to it. It's weird looking at my site on here because the images are really popping up kind of small. It's interesting looking at it on somebody else's screen. It's okay. I'm just commenting on the actual flow of it. I'm always worried about flow for my website for other people's point of view. So usually when I update my website, I send it out to a bunch of editors that I know and make sure that they can easily navigate through it, because the number one thing I've noticed, people are just, again, this is a basic thing, but just navigation. And if they can't get through your site quickly enough, or they can't see the images they want to see fast enough, they'll leave right away and just go to the next website. So number one thing is just make sure it's very accessible and it's very fast, and you have the images up front that you want. It used to be kind of like load up your images sort of like, you know, they're all supposed to be solid, but like you would sort of anchor your last couple pictures with really solid work too, because you want to get that wow. But some people don't make it that far, so you kind of load up on the front and wait, and hopefully they'll still flow together as well on those.
Of course.
Yeah, these are lawyers actually. I worked for this one magazine. It's called Super Lawyers Magazine, and it's such a breath of fresh air, honestly, because I end up doing so many shoots where I work with a lot of assistants and take a lot of lights, and it's really fast and it's like so snappy, and we got to go, and we don't really get to chat with the athletes as much. But with the lawyers, like this one right here, you know, it's just normal portraits. That's the next one's a lawyer as well. But it's fun. It's very interesting to get to know these people, and lawyers are one of the most interesting sets of people I've ever met before, for sure. So I've been doing that for 6 or 7 years, but I don't actually do headshots or anything for the law companies, which who knows, maybe I'll switch over to that now. But usually it's all it's all commercial work and some editorial work. Yeah. My last job was for Wilson Tennis. I've been doing that for 5 years, where I do a campaign where I spend about 7 days in a location and shoot all their key players and for different packaging and different events throughout the year. So we have a lot of different setups, and we're just shooting a lot of different people, and it's pretty fun. We've gotten it really dialed in. And it's good to have a good crew on stuff like that. Like, it's actually, that's one of the most important things I could say actually on those big shoots is make sure you have people that you trust and you can sort of let go on, because when you worry about it too much, or when you're used to doing it a lot yourself, you want to be more hands-on, but that time should be more spent with like explaining to your crew what you want, and then going back and talking with the client or talking with the talent, because it's really important to make those connections. You got to be on the same page as the client at one point, because you want to make sure that you're sort of funneling their vision through yours and you're on the same page, because you want to make sure that matches up. Otherwise, you know, what's the point of hiring you? And why are you the sort of the tool in a way that they're hiring in order to get what they need for their marketing or for anything else? So that's really important to have that sort of relationship. And I try to establish that a lot in the beginning, you know, see kind of their personality. Like, I'm not trying to I'm just sort of being myself as much as I can so they can get an idea of who I am and how I work. And then when I'm on set too, I spend a lot of time when I'm taking portraits talking with the athletes or with the person before, because again, you need to get away from the camera a little bit and just sort of introduce yourself and be like, let's find that common interest together so we can actually get something that doesn't feel weird or doesn't feel like we're absolutely just, you know, posing in some weird way. We got to get some sort of authenticity into it. Especially when you're doing movement portraits, like when they're in emotion, because you have to just sort of guide them and like, you know, coach them along, like be like, that was really great, but you know, you're holding back a little bit, you know, like do it like you would do in a game, or like go a little bit more, because what I see is flattening it out because of the, you know, the lens I'm using, or you sort of have to communicate your ideas with them as well, again, so you're on the same page. I think of it definitely as a team for sure. There's definitely there's definitely multiple teams that you're playing on. Like when I start shooting, I'm in the zone with that person I'm shooting, and like kind of everything else around me fades away. And I think that's majority of the time. Like a lot of people are either just standing around. There's agents. I try to get everybody a little bit back unless they're necessary. I'll have a secondary monitor where somebody could check off screen, and try to keep anybody that's distracting me or the person I'm shooting away to the sides or out of view, because it's weird getting your picture taken. I look awkward in front of a camera. Somebody who's just walking in for the first time, been like, okay, let's start taking your picture. They might smile awkwardly, or you got to just, again, you just got to get them in that comfort zone and find it so you can actually have a normal, I don't know, almost like you're having a conversation while you're taking the picture. And again, I'm sure a lot of you found that is the best way, but that's by far the best, I think the best advice I can give on portraits. A lot of times I'm doing very simple lighting for some of my clients now. They just want white backgrounds because they're just going to cut it out. But it's about that communication that you have with the other person that's making you valuable. And then being able to fix these problems on the fly very quickly. You know, being a very good problem solver is also pretty key too. And having that team around you who are also good problem solvers that you communicate well with. I can talk about any one of these pictures if you guys would like. I'm sort of just rambling on about like how I do my shoots, and I
Yeah,
don't know, just anything that's popping into my head really right now.
you're good. I think something that would be valuable. I mean, what is like a project look? Do you from like start to finish? Is this like the marketing team is contacting you and reaching out about you pitching some of these things that
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, they come to me. Okay, so I'll give an example. So the first opening pictures in my portfolio, the picture where an athlete where Anthony Davis is dunking the sun. So that was a very difficult one because obviously there's a lot of logistical problems or things you have to take into account with this. So the first thing they said is they wanted to do the moon, and I was like, we could do that, but I've definitely seen something like that before. But we decided on the sun after a while, and I just thought it was fun because it seemed, it seemed hard. And why not do something if it's hard? It should challenge you and make you excited about it. So they came to me about. Does somebody have a can? So they came to me about 3 months ahead of time, and they talked to me about this, and we went back and forth, and I just drew up plans about what I wanted to do. Like I drew this out in my head. I knew exactly how I wanted this image to be. I just needed to figure out, how I was going to accomplish this with tools. So I pitched the sun. We sort of had, and I mean, it was really just this main picture, and then we sort of jumped off of that one onto the other pictures, which there's like 3 or 4 more on here, but so then they come to me, and then we did 2 scouting days before. They wanted to do it at a sunrise, but we being on the West Coast, it doesn't really work like that. We don't really have a clear sky unless we're on top of a building or on top of a parking garage or something. So we ended up picking this place that was on the coast, and it was absolutely the perfect basketball hoop you could ever find. I mean, obviously there's trees in the background, but I feel like that gives it a little bit more authenticity to it. But it was really a lot of back and forth about how we were going to accomplish this, because it was such a time restraint thing where the sun moved, so each shot was timed out perfectly. It was timed out, and we also went and measured each point of reference of where everybody should be and how big the sun should be. I tried multiple different lenses and different cameras even. Some of them flared more, some flared less. I ended up using a Nikon D810, I think, and with a polarizing, an ND 10-stop filter on it that it was a variable 10-stop that I could change it to give more flare or to give a little less and to kind of deepen in on those edges, because I couldn't get above 250 for my shutter speed. Because I wasn't hypersyncing at this point. They didn't really have that. I mean, they did a little bit, but it wasn't very reliable, I guess. A lot of them weren't firing all at the same time. And so with this one, we ended up shooting with, I think, 4 packs. There was about over 10,000 watts of power to try to overpower the sun. It was a complete day where we did a stand-in who was a 7-foot tall guy who played in college basketball, but he just stood in for us the entire day, and we measured everything out. Then when Anthony got there, we spent about 45 minutes with him, and we did all these shots. But realistically, it was all about preparation and knowing exactly what you needed from every bit of it. And again, he wouldn't have been able to get his hand like that, and he wouldn't have been able to get his body separated enough if it wasn't for that communication. And like being able for him to trust me and know that I'm going to do this. When he first showed up, he was skeptical. And this was the third time I photographed him, I think. So he maybe recognized me at that point, but he was a little, stood off a little bit from me and didn't really joke around. But after the initial, I showed him one of the shots and we were close and he was excited, he got him excited and it sort of warmed him up. And at that point, I knew I could push him, and he's an athlete. A lot of these guys want to be challenged. I mean, a lot of times I will just challenge them because they're so competitive. You're not you're trying to egg them on, but you are, as long as they're in a safe, they're going to be safe doing it. But you're push it harder each time. And, move your hand just that little inch, you got to be very precise with a lot of that stuff. But a lot of times with big jobs, it there's a lot of steps involved before the actual shoot. And then when you get to the shoot, sometimes it goes really fast, and it's the hurry up and wait, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard. But then other times, again, that's why I like the slow pace of sometimes of shooting a normal person. And you're just sort of hanging out. And I don't even bring an assistant because I like to remember what it's like to set up all the lights. I mean, I do that a lot still. I help out my assistants when I'm setting up just because I want to make sure that everything's in place. But like to do everything yourself and to know that, you know, it takes a while. It's not just like it's going to be up like that. You know, it's everything's sort of pinpointed a lot of times or directed in a way that I want it to be directed at.
Great. Do we have any questions? Feel free, if you got questions, to throw them in the chat or ask aloud. Go ahead and take it away.
Hey, Dustin.
Yeah.
Going to high-speed syncs, now that it's more of a thing, how often do you use, well, high-speed sync, but then also ND filters and variable NDs? And then what would you recommend in terms of like large glass?
So definitely, okay, so that shot, the Dunk the Sun shot, I did that again with high-speed sync with volleyball players. So it turned out a little different though. I kind of liked it better with the other one because I got a better, like, I think I just got a better like look of the sun. Like in the other ones, when I used high-speed sync and everything, it gave me more flares. It gave me like, I don't know, it just was a different type of image. However, I will say I use it a lot because, you know, you got to overpower the sun sometimes, or to create the look you want. Even when you're taking a portrait of, you know, a lawyer or a person or just somebody standing there, sometimes you have to shoot at noon. I did a shoot in Abu Dhabi on a racetrack with these guys, and they had their slot window was from 11 to 1. And it was just hot, like just the heat coming up. The sun is directly overhead. There's literally no coverage anywhere from anything around us. And we have to get shots where they don't have dark circles under their eyes. So basically I had to do high-speed sync and 2 Magnum reflectors, like big giant, like long reflectors that are very, you know, pinpoint. They're like grids, you know, they push all the light forward and they amplify it. And we had to have those directly on them, and you had to make that look somewhat soft at the same time, you know. So if you move out of the way, or if they move in a way you don't need them to, you gotta watch the shadows change drastically. So high-speed sync is very important now. I use it a lot, but there is other ways around it. You know, I was actually going to do a workshop for Canon on high-speed sync and not high-speed sync. High-speed sync is great because you can actually have an athlete move at full speed. You know, you don't have to, you know, for that Dunk the Sun, he's just jumping up like this. And I'm like, don't move your body that fast because we can get ghosting. Because every time, and for people who don't know what ghosting is, it's when your shutter speed or your sync speed is slow, and it doesn't, you know, it's too slow for your actual shutter, or too fast. Wait, I can't explain this right now. But it leaves a trail behind, and usually at lower shutter speeds it's going to do that unless you have a higher one. You either need the higher shutter speed that's going to freeze the action, or you need the higher sync speed of the light sync speed to freeze the action. So one of the two has to be there. So if you're putting it at full power, you're going to have a very slow 400th of a second sync speed with your lights. But if you have a low power light, you can have it up to like, you know, 64 thousandths of a second, and it'll freeze any drop of water, any hair, any movement. So if you're in a studio and you're shooting at a very, very low power, you can get everything frozen. We just got done doing with the new 1DX3 some 14 frames a second with lights that I think it's going to be on ProPhoto's blog soon, but where we shot some tennis players just going full speed, but we were able to freeze every single thing and get that high speed at the same time because we were able to isolate and not have any outside lighting, and make sure that our lighting was the only thing doing anything in that situation. So, I mean, again, I know that was a little bit of answer your question, Logan, but also like going into, you know, many other things. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just depends.
Yeah, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Again, knowing your tools and knowing how to get around a situation, it's always good to learn everything you can. You know, you want to be able to problem solve or troubleshoot that immediately. You know, if they need that shot and you're the person to do it, then, you know, try to try to make it work in one way or another.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, I'll hire somebody else.
There we go.
Yeah.
Quick question for you. Nice to meet you, by the way. My name is Johnny.
Hi, Johnny. How's it
Over
going?
here in New Jersey. Yeah, just to kind of go off just this image, just because we're on it, the Anthony Davis one.
Yeah.
One, I think what I love so much about it, other than all the obvious elements, is like how you said the trees are in the back. It does feel so real, and I just love how his knee kind of, you know, his knee's not hidden within the tree, so you see that separation. I feel like for me, like that little detail there, kind of like sets it up for me. So I think that was, I guess the dual question. One was like, was that what you were going for? Like if his knee was tucked with, you know, hidden within the trees, would that kind of been like, not enough?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Sorry.
That also, no, it's okay. That and also, as far as your lighting setup for that specific project,
Yeah.
where did you kind of have everything? Because you said you used 4 packs, right?
Yeah. I honestly, I might be off, but I was 4 packs. I think there was like 9 heads altogether. It was a lot of lighting.
Wow. And
I there's a blog on Broncolor's website.
Okay.
I think that has it. I used to have I don't think my blog's up anymore.
I'll check it out. Yeah, because sometimes I battle like, hey,
actually, Petapixel also does it. If you look on like Google Petapixel and Dunk the Sun,
okay,
you'll find the setup, all the drawings, all.
Okay, I'll check it out, yeah.
Basically, I'm laying on the ground. Like I'm laying as far down on the ground as I possibly can. I'm like barely even looking through the lens. I'm just sort of like stationed on the ground. I should have had an angle viewfinder, but really I was so far on the ground because we had to get, like you said, we had to get that separation. Otherwise it just takes away, you know, you don't want anything there. You want that to be the main thing, and then you could pull back and, you know, see all the rest of the stuff. If there was that, if he was cutting into that tree, I feel like it would immediately go to the background. You know, he would lead, his foot would lead into the background, and then you would start looking at everything else. Mm-hmm. The most important thing is to look at, you know, is you grab you by the sun, and then it goes into his body, and then you go back to the whole picture, is what I take from it. And that background's just really, again, to give the sense of grounding that we're in an actual location. It's not in a studio somewhere. It was all right there. If you go check it out, you'll actually see like what it looked like, because it was, you know, it's before sunset, but it's, you know, it's bright out before sunset, and there's no coverage or any sort of thing blocking the light. So I mean, we had to be stopped down a lot on those in order to overpower that. And
wow, yeah,
look so much direct light.
Yeah, set up now while you're explaining it is crazy.
Yeah, it was hard, but it's so fun. Now, I mean, stuff like that. I did a shot where I shot the eclipse too, and we were trying divers. We were going to get divers jumping in front of it, but somebody broke our mirror before we were about to shoot, so we had to change our shot the morning of our thing after 4 months of planning, and it still turned out okay. Like but it's just those things that like they could fail, you know, like but that's what sort of gives you that adrenaline, you know. I used to do sports when I was in school, like most people, but you know, I'm competitive with myself. I want to challenge myself constantly, because I'm not saying that the stuff I do is easy by all means, but you know, it's simpler. You know, I've done it so many times. I've done like multiple light setups on like a 10 light setup on one athlete or a 12 light setup on one athlete, that it's second nature in my mind. So I want to try stuff that it goes a little bit above and beyond of what I'm used to and pushes me further. And also just, these are those shots that you look back on and you're like, that was really, really fun to do. And I'm so glad I was a part of that. And I'm honestly very fortunate that these people trust me to do that. But ever since that has happened, taking those risks and trying to do stuff like that, I've gotten so many like harder type jobs that I've been able to like, in stuff that's just like, why would that be a shot? Or how is that a shot? Like, even when we joked about this before, we're like, yeah, I'm going to go and shoot Anthony Davis dunking the sun. Like, I was joking about it because I didn't really get how I was going to do it yet. And, you know, it's just pieces that you got to put together. And again, all that knowledge that you've had before draws into it, you know, everything, even your action sports, when you're, all that stuff for me, like, played heavy into it. I shot action sports for so long now that I know movement really well. You know, I know how somebody's supposed to move in a game. I know, you know, where they're supposed to go. Like, you know, because you're sort of predicting when you're shooting with a long lens, when you're doing that a lot of times, you know, you don't know in a football game who they're throwing to half the time. And then you got to follow and chase. So a lot of it's just, all of it comes together. Like I said, that theater background, even I think even I built pools one summer, and then I had to build out some sort of thing that was sort of like a pool casing, and it for part of my set. And I was like, it's crazy how much of my normal life that just falls into place in the photography world. It's absolutely insane. So I just try to do everything. I have like 19 different hobbies that I'm always doing. My last shoot for Wilson, I made a chair. It's pretty cool looking. They wanted a vintage looking single chair, and we looked everywhere. We looked at prop houses. We looked at auctions. We've looked on eBay, Etsy, but we couldn't find one. So I just made one, and it looked like a rustic old chair. But yeah, I mean, it's it's not like an intricate carving or anything, but it worked really well for what we're doing. And it's just something, I like woodworking, so it kind of helps with that sort of background as well.
I appreciate it.
No problem, John. Anybody else?
We had a question in the chat here. I'll read.
Okay.
From Joshua. What is one of the biggest pieces of advice you wish you have heard or did hear when you first went from newspaper to commercial clients, or when you first left, the daily and then went to freelance, I guess?
Yeah. The best advice?
Yeah.
To like get to that point, or just like from?
Well, I guess looking back from our end, like, what's one thing you wish you would have known before you did that?
Well, again, I took like a safe route. I feel like I definitely, I have, I was married at the time. I live in Los Angeles. It's pretty expensive here. So I was like, how am I going to be able to support this? And really again, the best advice is really like what I was saying earlier about, you have to define your style, and you have to make your style like, it's like, I would get a lot of times where people would open up ESPN and would say, oh, I saw this image in there and it looked like yours. And I looked at the name and it was your name. And I'm like, best compliment ever. That is the best compliment ever, because then that means that, even though, a lot of people shoot similarly, they just, having a recognizable style is so important. It's like having a recognizable singing voice. Like, if you're any singer out there, you know who it is right away, and you're gonna, or let's see, like an actor for a specific role. Seth Rogen always plays that part, that's what he is right now. I mean, they always try to branch out later on, and my style grows, and I shoot other stuff as well. But even on my website, I try to present myself as a certain style to make sure everything's cohesive, and make sure that clients know that if they're looking for this, I'm able to do this. If they want other stuff, I have other stuff and other types of lighting. But really, the best advice is have a style and make sure that you're unique. Learning lighting is definitely great, but I will say, just you can do it without lighting for sure. I know a lot of my friends who do more of a lifestyle feel, more or with bounces and things like that, and they're amazing photographers. Having lighting background is great, because a lot of people are doing stuff in studios for advertising work, because they end up cutting it out, putting on packaging. It's a lot crisper. It's a lot more resolution, and the images look a little bit more can manipulate them more, honestly. They can do whatever they need to with them. And I think having a studio background in that stuff helps out immensely. But again, I know a lot of sports photographers that get work for doing sports outside, and I end up doing some of my commercial work. I'll end up doing action stuff on on a field or anything else too, and I'll supplement like mirrors in order to get a lit look, but also to get that normal, like I'll shoot with a 200 to 400 or a 600, and to get that look on field look. And then I'll or a 200 f2, I'll shoot with that a lot because it gives that shallow depth of field. And then I'll bounce in like from a mirror or because they're very intense and you could throw it from a long way. Just don't blind anybody. You could rent those mirrors. They're 4x4 mirror panels. They're really big. You put them on giant stands. They're usually like 25 to 50 bucks for renting them, but they're great if you don't want to shoot with light and you're really, and it's too bright outside sometimes. Using mirrors outside is amazing. And that's awesome. I don't think I answered that entirely. I just sort of said like the best advice. Well, no, the best advice would be to create a style and to make sure that that's your style. I tell people I do lighting workshops sometimes. I'm for different companies, and a lot of times I say like, take what I'm saying, take all these setups that I'm giving you or showing you, and take them and put them in your bank, your memory bank here. And then, try different stuff out. Look at other photographers, look at Michael's photographs or anybody here, and sort of like take what you like, and then it'll morph, into you. You want it to all, this is the grossest analogy I've ever come up with, but for some reason it stays with me. But you're what your client does is they feed you what their vision is, but then you spit it out of your mind, right? So you want yourself to be like a sausage maker. Whatever they put in that sausage maker, it's going to come out looking like your sausage. Now, again, this is the grossest analogy ever, but until I think of a better one, this is what I'm saying, because you want all that information to go into you and then to look like your images still. So use whatever I'm showing, or use whatever any other photographer that you've liked or you like the images from, and sort of just take it into your mind, and then it'll sort of, it's like learning chords on a guitar or a musical instrument. You learn the basics, and all that stuff you're taking in is like sort of the basics, and then you want to be able to manipulate those and make them into your own songs. So maybe that's a little bit better actually than the sausage maker. But yeah, be yourself. Emulate, but try to push and make it more, just latch onto something you like and push, because if you're not liking it, then maybe somebody else won't like it. You're going to show in your own work that you like your work. You want to show that you're having, I don't know, that I don't know, just make it different, make it your own. That's all I could say, I guess. Like, it's really hard to stand out in this world. There are a lot of photographers. There's so much information out there. Just make sure you have your voice in it, as well as, other lighting styles and things like that.
Yeah, something I'm noticing as we're doing this is a lot of the high school stuff, especially in this portfolio. I know you have some newer stuff as well, but a lot of the stuff you have in your early portfolio, high school stuff,
Yeah.
Can you? And I think for a lot of us is like, if we wanted to, grow in this, we're probably not going to go shoot for a Coke or a Red Bull or Nike, because you kind of got to build up to that, but also, learn. And I see a lot of the high school stuff. Can you talk about
yes.
a lot of your learning and where you practice that? So, especially cost wise, lighting gear is expensive. How did you, kind of build that portfolio and like find, people to test some subjects on? And, were some of those high school stuff, were those assignments, or were those more like self-assigned where you were practicing and kind of learning and playing with ideas?
Yeah. So a lot of that high school stuff I think was assigned, but I mean, some of the stuff I had before that wasn't, and that's where I learned the most of this. That was where you can't go into one of those big shoots. You'll be overwhelmed. Like, honestly, there's so much going on there. Like I said, you have to drown out all this, because there could be 25, 30 people all standing, huddling over, looking at images, or or trying to make themselves important on the scene, when realistically you need to again, it's the creative director and usually the talent, and even the creative director a lot of times you've got to have them step back because they could be a little bit too involved in this. But going back to the high school now, so yeah, like I started out with a speed light, and it was connected still to my camera through a cord, but it was an extension one, so I would hold it off, and do these weird sort of like things to get different looks and put gels on them, or color the Kelvin down to all blue, so all the background looks blue, but then I put an orange gel on the front and make them more normal skin toned on it. And having just learning what that stuff does, and learning how color balances work, or learning every little thing, working one light at a time, helped out progress as I went further on and added more lights, or was finally able to rent a light, or even on those high school shoots, those budgets were pretty low. And I was working for that company I was working for before, but I was shooting for ESPN High School. There was a magazine called ESPN High School. But even then I had one or two lights, and a lot of those I would go in and have no budget for any equipment or assistance. And I would use simple things. I think my first light, it was a light from like eBay, but it was like I don't even know what it was. It was like a bulb on it, but it still flashed. I had a sync cable, and I used like a Brawley box, which is an umbrella, basically like a shoot through umbrella with a black background. So you would shoot through it, and it was just a nice soft light. And if you go to I don't know where you're at on the pictures right now, but if you go to like some basketball players that were in high school, those were all shot on just that main one Brawley box at the front, and then I had two edge lights. But if you take away those edge lights, it's going to look pretty good too. And I would always say start with one light, because you want to see how that looks before you start throwing in other things. And then when you're working with edge lights, turn off your front light and just shoot with those edge lights first and see what they look like. Because those things are a lot harder usually, or they'll cut through. You'll see a lot of shadows. You gotta watch where it's throwing shadows from anything back here. Collars will throw weird shadows, and it's all a lot of like stuff that you don't really need in your images, because it's just gonna be distracting from your point of what your image is. So you got to watch flow of how your image flows. And if anything like that stops you, I feel like it's not going to be a good image overall. You need something that flows through, and you're able to look at that picture, and it just sort of like guides you to the right spots. Yeah.
You have any more questions?
Just one real quick before because I got to go. I just want to ask you, because just to piggyback off what you were just saying about like lighting, and you start with one light, and then you can kind of grow and learn what the other two do, or 3 to 4, and then 5 to 6, and et cetera, et cetera. Just like in your journey, I've worked with just one light. I've done multiple lights. Sometimes I've done continuous. Sometimes I've just done bounce cards. And like I think you mentioned, people that are successful with using each either or, depending on what it is and what their style is. Like for you, is there a right amount of light, or is it situational, or what's your advice to anyone at any level coming up that wants to be a commercial photographer? Is there a right amount of lighting to like, I guess, be considered like
high end?
Yeah, high end, or is there not? Because I've studied a lot and read a lot, so I'm just curious to hear your kind of like thought process.
No, I don't think so. Sorry. Yeah, no, I'm sorry to cut you off there. I don't think there is. If you look at a lot of like Vanity Fair photographers, it's one light usually. It's all Annie Leibovitz style. One big light from the side, really soft source right up there, and that's pretty easy to emulate with a bed sheet, and a bounce it off a white wall into a bed sheet. You have a very soft side light. If you wanted to isolate, or to be a little bit more directional, you could go straight forward with it and then add some sides to it. I don't think it is, because I end up doing a lot of shoots with one light. I think I'm more known for having a lot of lights when I shoot, and that's helpful, but styles come and go too. And especially for advertising, some people like it more lifestyle. I say lifestyle-y, but I mean more like look of an outdoorsy light. I think of lifestyle as a backlight situation where it's like overexposed a little bit ish, like kind of like warm tones. I don't know. That's what I think of. But you could still do a lifestyle-y type shoot with lighting, but you can't make it so directional and hard. It's
Okay.
to make it look high end. It's really again about creating a mood. You're creating a scene. That's a prop. That's a character. It's part of your overall image. Like the light tells a story too. The color tells a story. What they're doing tells a story. And the lighting tells a very big story. It's you're shaping it to create drama or to create just this overall atmosphere of this bright, sunny situation. So really the first thing I say when I'm thinking of a picture is like, what type of mood do I want? What type of feeling do I get or when we look at this? And a lot of times we'll do pitch decks and I have to explain these in words, which is not as easy for us photographers. We're usually good at explaining in images, but you have to sort of create this sort of flowery worded thing of how you want to shoot it and explain to them who are not necessarily as image oriented that how you want to shoot these shots. And I do not think that you need, 6 lights or 5 lights to create a professional looking website or collection of lit images. I think you can just, again, as long as you have that specific style and you have you do it really well. Like if you have one light, make sure that you do your one light really well, and watch your shadows unless they're intentional. If shadows are great, if you have an intention for them. If you don't, if it's just there because you're, oh man, I put that up too fast and you noticed way later, then, that's obvious. You should pay attention very closely to those. Again, that's another character in your scene. So make sure that you pay very close attention to light. when I get on set, I'm like, I literally go in different places and I'll shield things. I'll have my hand up. Like I'll do a lot of different things in order to make sure that everything is 100%. I mean, I only use light meters when I'm on sets with a lot of clients and when they want the look, I guess, of people doing extra stuff that they're supposed to. They're pretty important though. They can dial it in real fast, but usually, again, knowing that I've done this so many times, I can pick out how I want to do everything all at once. I can sort of set everything up and dial in as I go, as opposed to one at a time, which I recommend for everybody starting. If you're doing a big white background set, I would start lighting your background first, then make sure that's in a good place, and then light your foreground after that, unless you're right up against that wall. If you want those separations, make sure that you have the 2 different lit situations there.
Got a question here.
Thank you for
what's up, Michael?
After you shoot your images, what does your usual post-processing routine look like? This is from Mitch. So.
Mitch. It depends on the client again. So I'll tell you the basic one. Usually when I get the images, if I'm not shooting to a computer, I will take the images, upload them right away, because sometimes, when I don't shoot every day, because that's what I want. I don't want to shoot every day. I want to shoot shoots that pay me a little bit more, but also I'm not trying to hustle through the shoots. I want to think about them and I want to make sure that they're going to be something that I want to keep and maintain my portfolio with. So when I'm uploading them, I usually upload them through Photo Mechanic because I started in newspapers, and I feel a lot of people who use newspapers or wire agencies and things like that use that software. It's very quick, it's fast loading. But every once in a while, when I need to just do a batch really fast, I'll upload it into Lightroom instead. I've been thinking a lot lately that I need to switch over to a better system because I have a very archaic archive right now, where I have, when I upload my pictures, they'll go into my RAID drive, which I have a G-Tech tower with, I don't know how many 8 drives in it. And then I have usually individual SSD drives that I put different shoots on too. So I have multiple places for backups. And a lot of times I'll just do year, and then I'll do month, and then I'll do day, and I break it down like that. But I don't have and then obviously I'll put captions in every once in a while, or put keywords and stuff like that if I need to search for it. But usually when I'm searching for something, I'm searching for a specific person, or a specific people I'm shooting for. So when I label it in right there, I put in like the date up front, and then I'll put in the client, so Red Bull, and then I'll put dash, Anthony Davis. And usually that's how I do my folder system. Again, I know it's old. I've just been doing it for a very, very long time like this. I have, however, again, during this time, been thinking about having somebody come in and help me do a less archaic, more searchable, thing through Lightroom or something else like that, like where Capture One even. I use Capture One a lot when I'm shooting directly to my computer, because I feel like it has very good colors on color choices on skin tones. And it also is it's the fastest I've found when I'm shooting tethered, for clients to see the images right away and for them to look the best immediately when they're coming in. But then after that, after I got my images all in, I'll go through Photo Mechanic usually, because it's very fast. Hi, camera, AJ. It's taking a picture. I don't know. But when I see where I put the images in, and then I will select them all with a color system. If I have too many of them for my selects, I will go through a second round and sometimes a third, just depending on the client. Sometimes they want to see a lot more, and sometimes they want to see a lot less. It just depends on the client. If you have a lot of shots where your face is like, off this way, and then kind of looking back, and then looking this way, and then looking straight at camera, and then looking that way, sometimes they want to see all that because they have products where, they got to look over this way or just certain ways. So unless it's a very bad picture, I will leave a lot in for certain people because they need a little bit more to look at. But if it's somebody who's not used to looking through a ton of images, I try to narrow that down a decent amount, like not over 20 or 30 at the most. And sometimes I'll go to 10 just because I don't want them to have that big of a choice. Again, you're presenting with images that you want to get, and then I send them off to my client using Photo Shelter. I put them up on Photo Shelter for a gallery and a downloadable link, and I give them that and then a password, and they download them or make selects online if they don't want to download them. And then I will take those and I will edit them individually usually. And sometimes when I'm busy, I will have people cut pictures out if I need cutouts. But a lot of times I do all my own work. Again, if I'm really busy, I'll have somebody else do skin retouching, but only if it's very close to the face. Because again, when you're putting that much light and that much detail on somebody, you have a lot more stuff to worry about. When you're shooting shallow and you're shooting outside and the light's like sort of softening up everything, like it's not as difficult to do sometimes. But when you're putting really hard light on somebody and they have bad skin and you haven't F8, but you want it to look really hard and crisp, sometimes the things show up a lot more than usual. I don't take out anything that is not like if it's a blemish, like a acne or something like that, I will soften it most times or take it out depending on the client. If it's just me doing it, I will do as minimal work as I can. I won't do any kind of bone structure or anything like that unless the client asks. Then I will question it first and ask why they want to do it. And then, and if somebody approves it, or if the athlete approves it, I will do it, because I don't believe that you should do a lot of that stuff. It's just, I don't know. I feel like people start looking really weird and people go a little bit overboard on that type of things. But I will, however, I mean, my pictures sometimes do not look like, they don't look real. They look cartoonish almost. And that's the way I wanted them to look almost. I want them to look hyper real, I mean, that was definitely a period, I feel like, in my photography. And people like that sort of thing. I was actually just the other day, I took a picture of one of my assistants and he had a backpack on because he was standing in for somebody. And I thought it would be very funny to put him in a Dora the Explorer movie poster. So I took his image and I put the Dora the Explorer picture up, and I realized how much I had to actually tone the color on that. It was insane how hyper orange and yellow it was. It just looked so unrealistic. And again, I know some of my images on my site look like that, but it's crazy. You don't think about that sometimes, but a lot of that, again, it's all about your personal style and your preference. Sometimes I will just sit at an image or at my computer and just edit an image however I want it to, however I'm thinking about the feeling of, or I listen to music and that sort of influences me on the image I'm doing too. And like, so yesterday, here, I'll show you on my phone if you guys can see it. I doubt it, but I was working on this picture of Roger Federer yesterday, and he is very blue in this image, but in real life, you know, it wasn't very blue. I just wanted to do it that way because I felt like it was for me. I wanted it to look that way. So I decided to make him bluer than before, but let me open this up and put it up and see if you guys can see this. I do not know, but oh, it's a little bright. Yeah. It's too bright. Sorry, guys. But if I had it on my computer, I could probably share it. Let me see if I could lower the so I don't know if you can see that without too much back. It's kind of here. So anyways, it's very blue. I wish I could show you the beforehand. This is all in camera. It's shot with 3 different strobes, slow shutter, and there you could see like a motion blur like in through it. So I shot it at like, I think it was like 10 seconds, or no, not 10, like 6 seconds. And we basically just pinpointed the different spots that we wanted to go. And in between, I had him like swing to make those strokes, you know, because we had a modeling light on in order to catch that, you know, because they have bright, shiny things on the strings. But I just felt like it looked better blue. So I made it all blue. And it was just the feeling I was having that day. I could look back on it today and be like, that looks weird. I'm going to make it orange instead, you know, or more flesh colored instead of deathly, you know, looking. But I don't know. I kind of mess around and try to just let my mind interpret things how my mind it wants to interpret it. It's, again, it all goes back to your style and finding out exactly what type of photographer you are, what you like as photography, and it's all personal preference. So hold on to that as much as you can while like getting criticism from, you know, portfolio reviews and things like that. Definitely take in whatever you can. My first portfolio review was devastating to me. Definitely my first, it was so helpful though. I was sending it out to everywhere. So when I was applying for newspaper jobs, and like the person wrote me back and he was like, he was the first person. He was like, do you want me to be honest? And I said, yes. And he told me, and I was able to just correct the things that and within the next round of submissions, I got so many more offers or so many more opportunities because I just listened to a little information. But I still held on, again, to what I feel is me, though. Again, I can't stress that enough. Other people have different ideas. Take their opinions, put it in, listen to them. But don't like fight people for sure on like why you like this image. But you know, be aware that you're not the only one. Just make sure that you have a collection that shows off you while still maintaining that there are other people out there looking at your images. You want to portray something, but you just don't want to put up something that's out of place or that doesn't really fit your style or your mold.
Great.
Thank you.
We'll do one more question. I don't want to take all your time, but appreciate you taking the time. So that we have 2 kind of back-to-back questions based on the same thing. So it said, how do you go about figuring out budgets for a shoot? And then to piggyback off that, how do you price jobs? And does the client offer it, or is that something you're doing? So
yeah, it's a little bit of both. It depends. Like sometimes clients will come and say, I have this for a budget. It's nice, honestly, when they do that, because I feel like a lot of it's like a poker game, you know, like you're like, if I offer too much, like they're gonna, or if I say too much, they're gonna go away. If I say too little, you left money on the table. It's hard, but I definitely try to look back at past jobs, use those as references. A photoeditor.com has a bunch of bids and estimates up. They're crazy sometimes. You might look at it and be like, $250,000 for this? Why would you ever do that? I don't know. I don't know why somebody would do that. Honestly, that's a huge out of astronomical thing. And I've actually put in a bid for that. I didn't get it, but you don't make that much money. A lot of that money goes to like 1,000 different things. And definitely if a producer is doing this or a company is putting in that bid for you, it's going to seem a lot higher. And some companies like Nike, for instance, will want all those extras, but other companies, even if you think they're big or a bigger brand, they might not want a crazy, outrageous budget. They want something a little bit, more almost editorial size sometimes. I guess like when you're going into pricing out for shoots, you're looking at a few different things. How much for your day rate? Usually I have a set, like a minimum amount for a commercial job that I will do. Then there's a different one for editorial. But if I'm doing a commercial one, it's the day rate, and then it's also or my creative fee, which I don't say is day rate because I charge, if it's a half day or a full day, the same rate for a commercial job, because you cannot do another job in the same day for a commercial job, because a lot of this is, again, pre-production to make sure everything lines up perfectly. And then the other things are just what the client needs. You have to get as much information from them as possible on what they need. Sometimes they'll come to me and be like, I need to do some sports images for a college and it's super vague. Like, I feel like they try to be vague so you'll give them a cheap price. But you need this extra information. You need to know where they're going to go. You need to know what they're going to be doing. You need to know what style of lighting, like, is there something that caught your eye on my website? Is there something that you have already that you're already thinking of? Is there sort of an idea in place? And I always ask, if they don't present me with a budget right away, I say, do you have a budget in mind that you're trying to work within? And, that's a sort of a, here, I'm going to throw up this ball and see if anybody catches it sort of thing. And hopefully they do. And sometimes they're like, and I always add on, or would you like me to present you with a bid? And sometimes they just give me a price, and I either say I can or cannot do it with that price because I need more equipment, I need more assistance, you want these retouching, I need more retouching time, because again, retouching can be, color correction, or it can be 100 layers on one photo. It just depends on what they absolutely need in the end result, and you can't underprice yourself because you want to get that job to put in your portfolio. I actually lost a job to USA Swimming when they wanted me to do their whole Olympic campaign. And I bid a pretty low amount of money. I mean, at the time, it was probably about 12 years ago. I don't know. It was a while ago. But I bid $25,000, which it's a lot of money, but I don't get all that money. The reason it was so high was because they wanted to shoot underwater. So, and also light it. And also they wanted like above water stuff too. So I'm like, the equipment alone would cost, it was like $10,000 for what we needed. And what type of camera, they wanted medium format cameras. And I'm like, you were asking for some crazy stuff here. And I'm like giving you, and somebody took the job. They told me they gave the job to somebody who bid $1,500. And they said he wanted to have sports in his portfolio. And I was like, you're going to trust Michael Phelps, with somebody who wants sports in their portfolio. I was like, you're going to pay more. I mean, you're going to pay more later. I don't know. You need people helping you. You need good people helping you. You can't just have a friend half the time. You need somebody who can quickly solve a problem on those commercial jobs and get that light back up and running, or get a different light up and running, or you need backups. On editorial shoots and smaller shoots, or there's a lot less pressure, and you can get away with a lot less money. I've done definitely jobs for way cheaper, like a couple $100 here and there, where you don't need as much and you just use what you have and you sort of make it work. But those sort of jobs make you realize later on that it's just so much easier, doing it with all this extra money going into it, clear, obviously, and again, until you have those budgets, you have to sort of, not pretend, but sort of get that, like Logan was saying earlier, was get that high quality standard in your mind And then it's almost like a show. Like sometimes I'll put up my medium format camera on a tripod and never once use it. And I used an entire shoot for Tag Heuer, the watch company, with a EOS R. Like it's not even a professional. Well, it is, but it isn't. You know, and because their lenses are so sharp, like they're crazy tack at low depth of fields because that mirror is so close, or that sensor is so close to the elements on those lenses, and the newer lenses that they're putting out are just crazy sharp at like 1.2 and 1.4 and things like that. That I'll use that camera. And again, a lot of it goes back to using the right tool for the job. Like I know Johnny was looking at my blog post on the Dunk the Sun, and it shows me using it was like a 24 to 120 lens. And I have a lot of other lenses. I use that lens. People were giving me crap about it because it's almost a kit lens, right? And I was using it because it gave the perfect amount of flare and you know, just the shape, the distortion, like everything was perfect for what I needed to shoot for that shoot with Anthony Davis. So I choose what I need for the job, not necessarily because I have a big fancy medium format camera. I don't shoot with that all the time because it's harder to edit with. The colors and the gradients look great on them, but sometimes you're putting out more work than you need to, and you don't really need it. Your client may ask for it sometimes, but they don't even need it. You know, they're not going to put it on a billboard. And even if they do, you're not looking at it right, you know, really close. So I don't know. There's ways you could definitely, you could get pro looking stuff with minimal amounts of stuff. I won my first sports photography contest, and I was in college and I had 2 lenses. And, you know, it was a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200. And I was shooting sports. It's just looking at it differently. You know, take what you have and use it in a way that, you know, sees things differently, or, you know, is unique to you. Or, I don't know, I would just mostly make graphic images. And there were people in there. There were Sports Illustrated photographers in this contest. There were Getty Images photographers in this, like team photographers in this. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, I was shooting mostly college at that point. I was shooting just random people like that I knew. And it was just because of, you know, the images and the time I took to think them out and to actually do them and to tell the story with them as well, that made them a lot better than, you know, the circumstances. So don't just think Little League is Little League. You know, you can get some excellent images in Little League and any sort of thing along the way, high school or whatever else it could be.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
We had a blast, and I'm sure if you got any questions, you can email them. Sure, be happy.
Yeah, for sure. Send me over anything. I mean, all I'm doing right now is cleaning my studio. It's a lot of that and editing old pictures and teaching my kids first grade. So anyways, I better run. It was great talking to you. And again, just hit me up with any questions if you need to. And if you want me back on sometime, I'll ramble for another hour.
Well, thank you so much, Dustin. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks everyone for tuning in today. Remember, the link for the Slack is up there at the top. I'll post it again. Feel free to drop your Instagram handles in there, any of that stuff. And really appreciate everybody's time. And we'll do it again next Monday or Tuesday next week. Look forward to it. Bye, everyone.
Later,
Thanks,
guys.
Mike.
Later.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Who's Mike? Never heard of it.
I think I started that.
Thanks, Logue.
Definitely think I did. Oops.